Whipping winds, heavy rains, and homes torn to shreds. There is widespread damage across parts of Queen Anne's County after a powerful tornado overnight touches down. WJZ's first morning weather coverage. Investigator Mike Helgren is live across the bridge with more on the powerful tornado. Rick Ritter is in a neighborhood with more on the damage, and Captain Jeff Long and Sky Chopper 13 are over the area with the latest on the cleanup. Let's start with Mike.
Vic, police have severely limited access into the Bay City neighborhood. This is the intersection here off of Roman Coke Road right now. We can tell you this is now a confirmed EF-2 tornado. That means winds of more than 100 miles an hour tore through this neighborhood. And we spoke to a survivor, the only man who went to the hospital in all of this, and he says he is lucky to be alive tonight. The fast-moving storm barreled through Bay City, knocking down power lines and destroying homes in this Kent Island neighborhood. Were you here when it happened?
Yes.
Could you describe what it sounded like, what it felt like to you?
It was like a freight train coming through, and then broken glass, and the whole back of my house blew off.
Sounded like about the loudest thing I ever heard.
Really?
Yeah, it was. It definitely shook us awake.
And in all the destruction, only one person was injured severely enough to go to the hospital. 81-year-old Louis Solano.
My wife has been gone for 6 months, and I have nothing left.
Solano suffered a puncture wound to his back and injuries to his feet. He was right here in his bed. It was 1:30 in the morning.
I heard this tremendous crash, and this piece of wood fell down on my back, and then another part of the ceiling fell down on that, and then the lamp. And I crawled out and I looked for some daylight, and there was the daylight in the bedroom window, and I think the window's gone, and there was the grass, and I jumped out. I had nothing on but an undershirt, my bare feet.
The cleanup will be extensive, and power could take days to restore, with emergency management officials and crews from several states helping in the effort. And you're looking live at Roman Coke Road. This was very difficult to traverse this earlier today because they had a number of road closures here, and they were only letting people in who live in the area, who are trying to help in the cleanup as well. But we've seen so many people in this neighborhood coming together, helping neighbors, helping Mr. Solano. He's staying with a neighbor right now, and he told us that after he was able to crawl out of his bedroom, he went to the area near his car and he cowered down by one of the tires, and it took about 5 minutes for other neighbors to come out of their homes and bring him to safety, where he got treatment at the hospital tonight. Much more to come throughout the day here. We're live in Queen Anne's County. Mike Helgren, WJZ Eyewitness News.
Well, what an incredible story, Mike. Thank you very much. Our complete coverage continues now with Rick Ritter, live in Queen Anne's County with more on the damage near the hardest hit areas. Rick.
Well, Vic, it's a heartbreaking story at this local cemetery. 22 tombstones that were snapped in half or shifted off their foundation, if you will. This one here completely uprooted. Again, such a devastating story. We mentioned the debris that's all over this area. If you come with me this way a little bit, again, we're talking about debris. This is a piece of the guardrail here that flew across the highway here onto this cemetery. So that's just one example right there. If you come with me a little bit more, you can get an idea, or at least a widespread view, if you will, of all the trees that have snapped off, fell over here, some of them toppling onto tombstones. Everywhere in this area, damage all over.
Along the Bay Bridge, looks like a typical summer day, but on the other side, war zone-like images, homes leveled. Debris tossed hundreds of yards and power lines bent like straws. Storm damage along the eastern shore, that's surreal.
We've been here forever, never seen anything like this.
In Queenstown, residents woke up to whipping winds.
It was loud and quick, like when you're maybe at the subway and you hear the train go real fast past you, that whoosh.
Dozens of trees tossed around their neighborhood, nearly slicing a home in half.
First time I've ever seen it this bad.
For Gardner's Tree Service, it's been hours of surveying damage.
It's been nonstop since 3 o'clock this morning.
Their first stop, Stevensville Cemetery, where it's a heartbreaking scene. 22 tombstones snapped in half, others shifted.
You don't think of something that strong and heavy blowing over or being knocked over.
Some families brought to tears.
These are This is where people are buried. You don't want to see this kind of thing happen at all.
Traffic barrels tossed from the highway across the lot, the length of a football field. The storm's path evident.
Those trees are undamaged, and the trees down there are undamaged, so it's obvious where the path was.
Despite the widespread damage, those hit hard know just how lucky they are.
Back out here live again, talking about those winds that topped 120 miles per hour here at this grave site, untouched. Looks like no storm ever came through, but literally 5 yards over to the left of it, 600 to 800-pound tombstone snapped in half. Damage out here in this area that will take days, weeks, maybe even months to clean up. Reporting live tonight, I'm Rick Ritter. Back to you on TV Hill.
Rick, thank you. And let's turn now to Captain Jeff Long. He's in Sky Chopper 13 over the area with the swath of damage in the area. Jeff.
The first part of damage that we see starts basically at Buckingham Drive and Bay City Road, and it starts to run north, and you can see the damage as it ran through, mostly through the backyards of some of these houses, but it did manage to do some serious damage to the roofs. And one of the worst houses that you've been seeing pictures of is right here on the left-hand side. And then at about this point, this is where the storm started to make a little bit of a right-hand turn to the northeast, crossed a creek, and did severe damage to another house right over here, and then continued on to destroy some townhomes, knocked down power poles, and pushed off towards Castle Marina. The entire length of the swath of damage that's visible is about 3.5 miles here on Kent Island, taking out businesses and homes and leaving a lot of cleanup behind. Reporting live from Sky Chopper 13, I'm Captain Jeff Long. Back to you.
Jeff, if you can describe for us, if you can, what is the actual area in terms of square miles from your vantage point that was affected by the storm?
Well, there's depends on how you define affected by the storm, because there's neighborhoods that are about 3 or 4 miles away from here that were not hit by the tornado per se, but they were hit by parts of the tornado, or parts of the storm with microbursts and things like that. So there's a lot of trees damaged, a lot of branches and yards and things like that. But as far as the tornado damage itself, it runs pretty much a narrow band that runs from where we showed you Bay City across Kent Island, and it basically does go from one side of Kent Island all the way to the next over to the Chester River before we could no longer find any damage.
Okay, Captain Jeff Long, thank you very much. Reporting live from Sky Chopper 13. Our complete coverage continues now. Meg McNamara and Bob Turk are tracking the storm's path and what was spotted in Queen Anne's County. Let's start with Meg.
Well, absolutely. So the National Weather Service confirming that this storm had max winds of 125 miles an hour. That makes it an EF-2 tornado. And they actually say that the path 2 miles long and then 150 yards wide. So obviously a very, very rare occurrence for the state of Maryland. I want to show you what we picked up on our velocity radar. And the reason we keep track of that with a storm like this is the green shows winds going towards the radar, the red showing the winds going away. And when we see that red and green bumped up right up against each other, like we see right over Queen Anne's County, that is a strong indication of rotation. Heavy rains were also something that we dealt with this storm. Want to show you what we saw on the radar as this tornado tracked through. So pockets of purple there, the dark red showing us very, very strong cells here as this eventually then moved out of Maryland into Delaware there and off to the Atlantic. But we also picked up some strong rotation. Bob Turk, he is in the Weather Center with the latest look at that. Bob, show us what you're seeing.
All right, the actual area, as you mentioned, 2 miles long, about 150 yards wide. So when you look at it on radar, it's very, very small indication. But take a look what we have showing. That little circle right there, if you look at real close, it's going to cross the Bay Bridge. The actual low-pressure storm system that caused all this moved off to the east, but the storm itself moved through the Annapolis area. It got stronger as it crossed the Bay Bridge, and you can see an indication right there. That is the actual tornado signature of this particular storm. Happened around 1:29 a.m. this morning. Very little warning with this. We did have severe thunderstorm warnings for the area, and they did issue a tornado warning, but it was really, really late at night. A lot of people aren't up, and they probably didn't hear the warnings until they heard the storm hitting. So a lot of damage, as you saw. Once again, an EF-2 tornado around this region is very rare occurrence. Usually most of the storms we get are EF-0 with winds maybe 60, 70 miles an hour. This one, 125-mile-an-hour winds estimated. That's what caused all the damage in that local area around the Stevensville area on Kent Island. Back to you, Vic.
Okay, thank you very much, Bob and Meg. Let's go now to Jonathan McCall. He's live in the newsroom with some of the images sent in by our viewers. Jonathan.
Yeah, we've definitely been getting plenty of pictures from folks impacted by that storm, Vic. Several businesses in Stevensville were hit hard as those storms rolled in early this morning. Take a look at this picture. You can see plenty of limbs, branches covering the parking lot in this business area. This is the damage on the outside of Smoke, Rattle, and Roll. It's a barbecue shop. You can see that metal siding ripping off, wrapped outside the front door, the windows blown out, and on the inside you can see where food and snacks were also thrown to the floor. The powerful wind also damaged the restaurant's food truck. Owners tell me it threw it some 20 feet away where it landed on its side. Owners also tell me they hope to get back on their feet pretty soon. Tonight we've learned that the Red Cross now accepting donations to help the victims of this tornado. We have more details on how you can help donate right now at cbsbaltimore.com. Vic, let's send it back to you.
Okay, Jonathan, thank you. And here's what you need to know about that tornado. At least one person was injured and is being treated for non-life-threatening injuries. Emergency officials are asking people to shelter in place as there are a lot of power lines down in the area. Many residents remain without power at this hour. If you must go out, officials want to keep the traffic at a minimum on Route 8 and keep it open for first responders. Stay with WJZ for complete coverage of the destruction on the eastern shore. We'll have the updates as the cleanup continues and more information about the storm as that information is released.